The artist that we're going to be looking at today is named Romare Bearden. He was born on September 2nd, 1911, and died March 12th, 1988. Bearden was born in North Carolina in 1911. His mother Betsy was a significant figure in New York's Board of Education, which led Romare to meeting major figures of the Harlem Renaissance. He studied his art under a German artist named George Gross at the Art Students League from 1936 to 1937. Bearden supported his early studies by creating political cartoons for African American newspapers, including the Baltimore Afro-American. Here are 3 artworks that Bearden created. Bearden was a painter and collagist mainly, but also worked in performing arts and literature. A primary subject that Bearden focused on was African American life, producing thousands of deeply spiritual paintings, collages, and photographs, and also a single sculpture. We're going to look at the theme of identity and how Bearden should inspire our work today. Here are 3 more images that Bearden created. The top left image is a collage that he created with photographs, and the bottom left is a collage that he also printed over top of, and the right is another collage that he printed over top of. And the theme of identity. Early in Romare Bearden's life, he attended Boston University, where he was their star pitcher. He was offered to then pitch for the Philadelphia Major League team, the Athletics, in 1930. However, Bearden declined the offer because the management insisted he pretend to be white because of his fair complexion. Accordingly, his only sculpture he produced was an abstract work of wood, which was inspired by the tale of Meridius. Meridius was a black soldier in the Roman army who was beheaded for refusing to abandon his Christianity. We can see how Bearden portrayed his past experiences to create artwork which represents himself and his identity. Identity. After I explain the topic of today's lesson and show you how to create the work, I want you to think about how you can identify yourself within your artwork. Maybe you use identity to show where you're from, what your interests are, or the culture that you come from. We can use identity, like Romare Bearden, to give our artworks deeper meaning and let people know who we are without talking. So the title of my workshop today is called Reclaiming Nature. I came up with this idea during the COVID-19 pandemic because there's a lot of reclaiming of nature going on. This workshop is intended for grades like 3 through 5. It's fairly simple. It's just a collage with some pictures. So to get started, the history of reclaimed nature and how we will create it. If we take a look at these 3 images, you can see sort of what I mean by reclaimed nature. It's when nature is taking over man-made objects. Like the top image on the left, you can see all the vines around the trees, the overgrowth, same as the one below it, the overgrowth of the car, the house. It's kind of how nature reclaims its territory. Even in the photo on the right, you can see somewhere that there's not really supposed to be nature, or where there might have been once nature, but then it was built upon and then abandoned, and nature reclaimed its territory. You can see with these 2 photos, the one of 1965, you can see a well-kept area, probably well-maintained and lived in. And in 2012, you can see how maybe it wasn't abandoned and not well kept, so trees and overgrowth retook this building. It's a really kind of unique and calming idea to me. The way that nature really goes out of its way for us, and then when we're gone, it comes back. So, like I said, I came up with this idea when COVID-19 started, and I started seeing some images of people around all over the world saying how their town or their city is being reclaimed by nature in various ways. So I screenshotted a couple tweets that I found of people talking about this idea, and also it actually inspired some people to make memes about it that are really funny. So like this tweet: here's an unexpected side effect of the pandemic. The waters flowing through the canals of Venice is clear for the first time in forever. The fish are visible, the swans have returned. It's really neat how stuff that people don't normally see is starting to happen, and their water is now clear. They're getting this wildlife coming back in. Maybe the wildlife was there before the pandemic, but staying out of humans' way so they don't get harmed. And then this tweet about these elephants. While humans carry out social distancing, a group of 14 elephants broke into a village in Yunnan province looking for corn and other food. They ended up drinking 30 kilograms of corn wine and got so drunk that they fell asleep in a nearby tea garden. This is incredibly funny, and it's really incredible how this wildlife and nature knows when it's safe for them to come around. And then this next picture is a meme. That was really funny, and it really goes with the idea of this lesson. This person tweeted, "Wow, this is New York today, where the city streets are empty and nature has returned for the first time since 65 million BC. The earth is healing. We are the virus." It's so funny. And the original idea for this lesson was actually to be a Photoshop lesson for about middle school to high school age. But I turned it into making a physical collage. We'll still be doing sort of the same idea of putting things where they don't normally look like they are. And then this last meme, wildlife is finally returning to Thames. Nature is healing. You can see this inflatable duck coming through under the bridge. They're making a joke about how nature is coming back in, or this wildlife is coming back in. Sort of like the first image that I showed you from Venice. It's really funny. So I'm going to talk about some of the materials we're going to be using. First, you want to make sure you have a big paper, so 12 by 18 inch or 11 by 14 inch. You can use black or white. I think larger is better because it gives you more room to work. Then you can get Mod Podge or glue. I'll be using Mod Podge and a bowl. I'm just going to be kind of doing like a paper mache. It's choice, but I think especially for younger kids, Mod Podge will be fun to kind of get a little bit messy and also help the images stay down on the paper. And also using Mod Podge, I know, lets inkjet paper bleed into the other images, so we'll kind of have this like wavy looking effect going on. And then you'll need some scissors, and then you'll also need some printed pictures. You can use a regular inkjet printer, a home printer. You can get the pictures in the Google Drive that I'll provide for you. They're all free images I took myself of different areas in Baltimore, and then I'll also provide a template of some letters that are cut out like magazine cutout letters for the students to make a title for their image at the top or at the bottom, wherever they want to put it. They're also encouraged to use their own images as well, so if they want to go around their neighborhood and take some pictures and then print them out, It'll give their own artwork some of their own ideas as well. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is look at some different cutting techniques. So for like a picture like this, you can do a pretty hard outline around the buildings just by cutting around like where you see the edges of the building. So I can do this pretty fast. So at the bottom here at this, I'm gonna cut around the stairs, but I'm gonna cut the sidewalk off, and then you get sort of an outline like this. So then I'll clear my scraps, and then for a picture like this, where I kind of want to get some clouds in my top of my picture, but it'll be kind of hard to cut the clouds out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the excess picture that I don't need, and then I'm just going to cut a cloud shape into the sky. So you'll see some of the clouds, but it'll also have a unique shape to it. And then I'll cut a smaller one out just so I have multiple with the same texture and idea. Then I'll put them to the side and clear my scraps again. And then for a picture like this where it would be kind of hard to cut around the flowers, I'm just gonna cut a unique shape. Sometimes part of collaging, it's good to use some freeform and kind of be expressive with your cutting technique. So any simple shape will work. And then I'm gonna grab the template that I've provided in the Google Drive, which has the different kind of letters, and I'm going to cut out the word that I want to have at the top. For you guys, a good idea for writing up top, you can write your street name, you can write like a metaphor for your street and nature. For mine, I'm going to write concrete jungle with the cutouts. And then next I'm going to try and arrange my pictures to kind of get an idea of what my collage is going to look like. I might not use all of my scraps, but it's a good idea to have a bunch to work with, so at this point you can move things around and see how you like the fit on them. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and get the background in place so I can see where things are gonna line up. So then I'm gonna put my glue into my picture into my glue, and Mod Podge can get a little messy. Everything dries clear with Mod Podge. You can use your fingers or you can use a brush. Then I'm going to layer another picture on top, and this is one of my sky pictures, which I cut up in 3 different shapes or 4 different shapes. I can just place them around and leave some background showing, leave some of the paper showing. And again, don't be afraid to get some of the glue on there. If it dries clear, it should say on your glue bottle, and Mod Podge dries clear. So right now what I'm basically doing is I have my background images coming together, and then I can start layering over top. Now layering is when you put one picture in front of the other to kind of make a depth of field. So a depth of field is the variety that you have from what's in the back to what's in the front. So it makes things look like it's coming towards you or going away from you. Periodically, you might want to wipe your fingers off so these pictures don't start sticking to you. And with the amount of glue that you use, I like to use a lot of glue because it makes some of the ink on the paper bleed. It's really your choice. The more glue you use, though, you will have to let it dry longer, but you'll get some really neat ink spread going on. So you can see now I have the background which of the sky, and then I have the midground, which is where the buildings are. And now I'm going to place a foreground over top of the sky of the buildings, like with the flowers on the bottom and then these clouds. And you can see the cloud shapes that I had made earlier. They have some clouds in them and some of the blue that represents sky. So then you can pat down some areas, make sure everything's nice and flush to the surface. So then we're just going to cover up some areas and just add some extra little things, because right now you have a foreground, a middle ground, and background. Anything else you add is just little details. So I have pre-cut a bunch of smaller little objects, like a smaller building, some smaller flowers, and that's why it's a good idea to maybe cut out a bunch of different things. So like this dog, it just adds another layer of depth to your image. So now it gives it some more personality. And a good technique if you're going to use a bowl to put your Mod Podge in is if you take your image, you dip it in the glue, and then you pinch and pull down on your image. It will get some of the excess glue off, but it will also help spread it around. And sometimes with collages, putting things that don't normally make sense, like maybe this duck, it adds a little bit of comic relief or comedy to your picture. It makes it a little bit more interesting. So you can see with this building how it's overlapping. The other building, it doesn't make much sense, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that little flower and cover up so you can't really tell where that building wasn't making much sense. And then another good idea with collages, even though you're going to have a title, it's a good idea sometimes to have other images with text, just to break up from your title and your image. So with that, I put a little sign of wallflowers, which are some of the flowers that I have surrounding the building. So right now I'm spreading out my letters so I can spell out my title. And when you're working with letters, it's good to kind of scatter them around up top, like make them not so linear. Maybe tilt them or rotate them a little bit so it looks a little intentionally placed. A lot of art making is making intentional movement with things. And if you're looking for a good metaphor for your title, you can always Google some keywords like city quotes, city metaphors, nature metaphors. I'm not sure where concrete jungle came from. It was just in my head. I'm sure it was used somewhere else. But going with the theme of nature, of a jungle, and the city, which is a lot of concrete, it made a lot of sense to me. And you can see how I'm placing these letters. They're not straight across, they're not back to back to each other, they're spaced out, they're rotated. And then you can let your image dry. I let mine dry for about 45 minutes, and then this is what it looked like. I also used a fan to help it dry.